Weiss. I'm a clinical sexologist, a social worker. I've been working in the field of intimacy disorders, infidelity, cheating, marital problems of that nature, sex addiction, love addiction, and chemsex for about 25 years. And this is actually a time when Tammy and I, my colleague, get to just answer questions and enjoy interacting with you guys and hopefully learning stuff and teaching stuff. And what I always like to say about this session is, pardon me, take what you like and leave the rest. There'll be things you like and you think, oh my God, this is everything I always wanted to hear. And so you'll be, oh, I don't like that. I don't think that's true. I don't know you. We don't know you personally. We're going to answer questions in a way that hopefully suits your situation. This is, by the way, my preferred background. I want everybody to know that. I can have all kinds of backgrounds. And I want to tell you why this is my preferred background, because an old woman who was a painter, friend of mine, who was quite crazy. I think I can say that because she's probably not listening. We were on a camping trip once with friends and they had hoot owls. And at night, she said she could see the colors that the hoot owls were hooting by, and so she painted them. And these colors around the moon are actually the sounds that she heard. She put them into color. And so for her craziness, and because I just think it's pretty, this is my new background. And Tammy, I have to say, you look like you're ascending to heaven.
Well, I just changed mine so that now I have the sky, because I thought I've got the sun going to your moon and hoot owl stars.
And Uranus, but let's not talk about that. Why don't we get started?
I've got questions for you. My husband has had a relationship with a man, had many anonymous encounters with men, cross-dressed it has escalated, and has now admitted he has been with many female prostitutes. We have been together 7 years, but he admits it to be a lifetime problem. We are both in therapy, but I don't even know what I am dealing with: preferences, gender, addiction, or acting out previous traumas. I want a disclosure to know what I'm dealing with, but I can't commit to staying under all scenarios. He hasn't agreed yet. I can't imagine, given what I already know, what he is holding back.
Well, there's a lot of questions in there, right? So maybe what I would like to talk about is a little about disclosure. Disclosure is a process that we encourage couples to do if they're going to stay together, to begin to grow their relationship and heal it. And within that, and it's a therapeutic exercise, it's done with therapists present, and the goal is, as horrifying as it is to any sex and love addicts out there, we don't think your partner can really go forward with you in a healthy way over time unless they understand what it is they've been through and what you've been going through without them, so that you can have a clarity going forward. Now, sometimes spouses will say, well, how can I commit? And here's the other piece. We don't do disclosure. In other words, as therapists, I don't believe that there's a reason to do it unless a couple is going to work towards staying together. As much as you spouses who have left us or broken up, or we've broken up from you or left you or whatever it is, once a couple is no longer together, there is no emotional value for the couple or your potential kids to finding about information that happened if you're no longer going to be married. And sadly, sometimes I've seen that kind of information end up with lawyers and in lawsuits and in custody battles. And so we don't do disclosure if you are going to separate or are separated. So then the question comes up, well, how do I know if we're going to stay together, or if I want to stay with this person, considering I don't really know what they've done? How can I commit to staying if I don't know what the disclosure is going to reveal? And that's part of the question that Tammy had for us. And there may be other parts, but that's the part I heard. And so here's what I would like to suggest we do with disclosure with couples that aren't quite sure if they're going to stay together. If we're working with them, and this is what a therapist does, or in a treatment center, what we do, we ask you to put the relationship in what we call a safe harbor, meaning that, let's say, for at least 6 months, no matter what happens, you're yelling, you're screaming, you're hating, you're loving, you're living together, you're separate, whatever it is, for this period of time, you agree to not break up, not divorce, not go see lawyers, but just try to work on it. And if you're both sincere about that commitment, then we will do disclosure with a couple that isn't sure if they want to stay together, because you have at least made a commitment to working on whatever you've heard long enough to decide in a healthy way, not just out of anger, if you want to stay or go, and if you think you can move forward. So that's a big part of the question I wanted to answer. More meat on that bone, Tammy, for this?
Yeah, I think so you're dealing with somebody that admits to having a lifetime problem. And so, and I hear what you're saying about seeing therapists. So I'm going to go to the angle of not every therapist is trained to to address this. And this is a complicated situation. He's cross-dressing female prostitutes, having sex with men. So, it isn't just the infidelity. He's having affairs, with other women, or not that that's just, I retract that word right there. But I mean, this is a more complex issue. So it would be very challenging in a weekly therapy session for him to get the kind of foundational help, I think, that would be beneficial for him. Thoughts?
Yeah,
please.
I want to jump on that because and let me expound on that. So if someone comes into me or to us for therapy, or they come to go see a therapist and they have a problem of compulsive porn use, or they've never been able to stay faithful, they cheat with prostitutes, they cheat with affairs, they hit on people at work. That's a whole area of kind of addictive and compulsive disorders, pretty straight ahead. It's not straight ahead for you who are suffering through it, or you who have experienced it in your partner, but in terms of therapy, we pretty much know how to negotiate in that pretty direct route. It has to do with certain trauma. We understand how to help the person pull it together and contain it, and how to work with couples going forward. But there are multiple issues in this particular email. What you're talking about is someone who may be bisexual. He's had a relationship with a man. He's had anonymous encounters with men. Does that mean he might even be homosexual? I don't know. Just because someone has sex with you as their dedicated partner and husband doesn't mean that they're really interested in other women and aren't primarily interested in men. I don't know. Then it says he cross-dresses. Well, that's a whole completely different area of human sexuality. It has gender, and gender identity could be related to trauma, but it is often, by the time the person is doing it in adult life, it's a part of them, it's inside of them, and it's not going to go away. So, and people who act out in multiple ways, with cross-dressing, with men, with women, they lie about they often have multiple kinds of complex emotional problems. So Tammy is right. In a case like this, I would either really want to see an expert, especially for the assessment phase, or this is someone who really belongs in treatment. This is the kind of case that I think that we do really well with, because I love complex cases and I've worked in the field long enough. But regardless of whether this person, your husband, works with us or someone else, I really suggest that you maybe drop Tammy a note. She can refer you to someone wherever you live who knows their stuff, because this is, and what Tammy said is true. I want to tell you all of this. It's a sad but true observation. I've been in the therapy field as a professional for almost 30 years. I think maybe 15% of licensed therapists, that include psychologists, social workers, MFTs, LPCs, all of us, about 1.5% of the whole, any training at all in human sexuality. And in a case like this, we're talking about potentially sexual trauma, I'm guessing from the past, sexual abuse in the past. We're talking about STDs. We may be talking about orientation, gender identity. There are multiple layers of sexual and mental health issues here. So whatever you do to the person who wrote this, I suggest you go see an expert. Because what you're describing is a very complex, no, to you it's just your husband, but when I see all that, it's like, whoa, that's a very complex case. That what you were kind of saying, Sam?
Yeah, I agree. And, and until, having disclosure until things are stabilized and you really know what's going on isn't really helpful. And I get that you want to know. I really do understand that. But what typically happens is then there's another one, and then there's another one, because the behavior hasn't stopped and not enough stuff has been unpacked. There really isn't enough information. If you asked him right now to tell you everything, which I don't advise, but
he wouldn't remember.
He couldn't do it. Yeah. And it's not that, even if he tried, he wouldn't be able to do that. So getting the best help you can
in whatever form.
Yes, I highly encourage that. And yes, if I can be a resource, don't hesitate to reach out. So,
and I'll say that
to all you
guys. That's part of our job. Ooh, I like that better now.
You just
well, I just wasn't happy with
you wanted the moon over you.
I wanted the moon over my head.
I totally get it.
How did you know that?
I can tell.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, are you ready for the next one?
I am.
My husband has been in recovery since January. I am as well. So I don't know if that means you're also in an addict, or, well, let's keep going. We're living separately and have started couples therapy. It's very slow going, so we're thinking about doing an intensive to help move the needle. Any advice around that? I said at the beginning, the couples workshop in Los Angeles, Seeking Integrity. Paul Hartman is a gifted facilitator with couples. He's worked with couples for years and years, does a great job. If you want information on that, go ahead.
Just maybe just a little bit. We do couples intensives every month, one a month. Sometimes they follow people who've been in treatment. Sometimes people just come for the workshop. Sometimes people work in the workshop and then someone stays for treatment. It can be all worked in any way like that. But if travel or finances are a problem for you, Tammy has a number of organizations that do, people that we trust that do this kind of work around the country. And if we can help you, maybe 2 or 3. So, you know, again, I would write Tammy at seekingintegrity.com and she will respond to you. But let me say, we established a couples workshop because partners, you guys always feel left out of treatment, and I get it. The thing is, and sorry, addicts, and so I'm going to apologize to those of you who are sex addicts, porn addicts, love addicts. We're actually a lot more trouble than our partners are. We really are. Our partners are not out there having sex with strangers, ruining their relationship. You know, we are at least engaging in behavior that makes us look a lot more trouble than our partners. So now we may say, well, my partner's nagging all the time. They're blaming me. They're this. Trust me, we're sicker than our partners, at least in the beginning. So partners, spouses, loved ones, please understand that we don't do treatment with your husband or wife first and include you not as much because we don't think that you're important, or we don't think your voice needs to be heard. In the treatment world, we are treating the person with the biggest problem. And trust me, if you're married to one of us or involved with one of us, you know that we have problems. And a lot of them go far beyond our simple sexual choices. They go into how we treat people, how we act in our families, whether we lie, whether we're truthful. Our whole personalities are set into some of this. So, this is a long journey, a lot of work. I know we have 17 questions, but I just wanted to really encourage couples working together. That's a good thing. What you got, Tammy?
Next one. I am 15 months from finding out about my husband's emotional affair with my cousin's wife and 9 months from finding his porn addiction on his phone. He still continues to lie. Even when I'm showing him proof of his lies, he continues to lie to my face. He tells me he doesn't lie about everything and isn't lying about cheating. Very distressing. I hear you.
So we lie, we do. And if you're a sex addict or an active sex and love addict or having affairs and all that stuff, you've probably been really good at lying for a really long time. So I want to tell you spouses that most of all, I think lying comes, there is a saying, how do you know you're talking to an active addict? What is it? How do you know if an active addict
is lying? Because their lips are moving.
Their lips are moving. So we have lied to you for years. And I know that there are addicts and people who act out here say, well, I never lied. I never said something that wasn't true. Well, there is this thing called lying by omission, which means every day when you walk in the door and you know you've done something that would upset your spouse and you choose not to tell them, you're lying to them, whether you know it or not. So we have years and years and years of lies and secrets that have to be worked out. Not unusual in my experience for those of us who've been lying to you for a really long time to be, what's really going on is we're just afraid of you. We're afraid of your anger. We're afraid of your disappointment. We're afraid of it. Understand, we would much rather act out with strangers and get away with it than face your wrath. Now we're facing your wrath and we don't want to and we don't like it. So, you know, most sex addicts in general, as I think many of us can be assertive in the world and really take charge of things, but sometimes in our intimate relationships, we will not always speak our mind and not always say things that are true, because that's where we're the most fearful of being let down, hurt, or criticized, because we're messed up. My point being that I used to have an agreement with some of my clients when I was seeing them in the beginning, and I'd say something like this, and Tammy's heard this before. Listen, I know that you're used to lying, and I know that when you're ashamed of something, and you're looking someone in the face and they're asking you about it, you're probably going to lie because that's what you've done all your life. So the bargain I make with my clients is this. I expect that you're going to lie to me for the first 48 hours. In other words, you're going to lie to me on Monday morning, but I do expect that by Wednesday morning, you will have thought it through and called me or written me and told me the truth. I don't care if you lie to me in the moment, and maybe you're so skilled at lying or so afraid of being yourself and facing consequences that you just don't have the courage, if that's what it takes, to be truthful. Fine. Be truthful within 24 hours or be truthful within 48 hours. That at least is a key to starting the process. And spouses, I would suggest to you that as much as it is not unreasonable for you to ask any healthy human being, it may be unreasonable to expect that we are going to be honest with you every single time from the get-go once you find out. We're not used to telling the truth. Our mode is hide and jive and seek cover. And being honest and facing consequences is not something we're usually good at manning up for. It takes us time to learn it. But you can't expect that we will be truthful with you. And I would make that kind of contract with my husband. Honey, I want you, I don't care if you lie to me, I want to know within 48 hours, or something like that. It takes him off the hook of having to be honest with that face he feels he's going to fear disapproval from, but it does leave him responsible for being honest. And I think that might be a stepping stone. I don't think many of you, perhaps, you say 9 months or 15 months from fun. Your husband had an affair with your cousin. He has a porn addiction, and he's hidden all of this you forever. So look how good he is at lying. Look how good he is at keeping secrets. Look how good he is. Look how important you are to him, and how much he's trying to keep you from being upset about his behavior. It's going to take a while for him to be dead honest with you straight on. That's just how we are.
So I'm going to show, Dr. Rob wrote 2 books. So this is the original, and this one, Marnie Faree, added from a Christian context. So for those of you that identify as Christian and want some biblical context, that's a good one. The other thing is...
Wait, what is that book that you waved?
Oh, you couldn't read that? It said Out of the Doghouse. It says a step-by-step relationship-saving guide for men caught cheating, and this one is for Christian men, a redemptive guide for men caught cheating. So both of them caught cheating. But the other thing I thought of is this is Sex Addiction 101, and there's an accompanying workbook. And this says a basic guide to healing from sex, porn, and love addiction. So that's a great place to start, written in a way that it's really helpful.
Thank you for the marketing, Tammy. I do want to say to you, spouses, though, that if you hadn't, I wrote Out of the Doghouse because I have worked with men for 22 years. At that point, I had rarely seen a man know how to apologize or be honest with a woman that he had hurt. I realized that men just don't get it. In general, men who are cheating don't understand the depth of pain, hurt, and angst that they cause their family and their relationship. And therefore, if you don't understand a problem, it's very hard to fix it. And so I think that, I see men who've cheated on you, ladies, flowers, moonbeams, vacations, chocolates, a nice new ring, let me, and then it's 60 days, how come you're not being nice to me? And don't you understand, guys, that it can take a year or more for someone to recover from this kind of betrayal, and that once you've broken trust, it's never going to return in the same way. But men often think, well, this is kind of like fixing, a problem with a coworker that they had a bad word with, and after a few days, it's all going to be better. We struggle to understand the depth of pain that we cause you ladies when we do this. So I wrote a kick-ass book to say, guys, this is what a woman goes through when you cheat on her and betray her trust. And here is what you're going to have to do to get her back if you want a healthy relationship going forward. And most men I have had read it hate this book, because they see themselves in it. They realize the pain they've caused. They understand the amount of work they're going to have to do to heal it. And they don't like it, but they like it because it does give them a path. And that is Out of the Doghouse. Okay, questions?
Okay.
I'm petting
So
my
the
dog,
next
by the
one,
way. I look a little strange. I'm petting the dog down here.
The next one is a 2-parter. So my husband has disclosed his infidelity and recently attended your 2-week course in LA. However, he returned saying he learned so much about why he acted out and learned how to deal with his anger management. So then the next part of it is, however, he no longer is engaged in 12-step programs or anything else. He believes he can control his behavior. Okay. I would appreciate any advice you may be able to throw my way to convince him he cannot recover on his own.
I'm so glad that you wrote, because I don't know if you all know this, but every Monday night when Tammy and I do this, the people who are in treatment with us are also listening. So everyone in our treatment center, anyone who is at Seeking Integrity in treatment for 2-3 weeks, whatever it is, every Monday night they're sitting and listening to this. So this is a great thing for the people who are in treatment right now to hear, and anyone else who's been to treatment for that matter. And treatment means going away somewhere, kind of, I'm not talking about a weekend, but actually spending a few weeks working on yourself. So here's the answer. It's not unusual for people to have what I would call an epiphany or two in treatment. Treatment is, I mean, if you think about what we do in rehab, I mean, I'll just give you a little explanation. In part, what we do is we create a safe enough place where the person doesn't really have to be responsible for much while they're with us. So when someone's in treatment, we feed them, we wake them up, we tell them when it's time to go to bed, you know, we make sure their sheets are clean, we take care of them, we tell them where to be in the morning, where to be in the afternoon. This is treatment. And naturally, when people have a place where they're not worrying about where they're going to eat, where they have to go, where they have to be, but they're kind of being guided and supported everywhere, it gives them a chance to look at nothing but themselves. And that's really one of the gifts of getting away. It's not that we don't want you spouses involved in treatment, we do, but this person has been so stuck in their own insanity for such a long time that they really need to just be out, almost away from everything, to just look at their lives, separate from work, separate from you, all of that. But I have to say, and I will tell you that most people who go to treatment, whether it's with us or in most places actually, if they don't do a terrible job, will leave there feeling good. We call it a treatment high. Why does someone leave treatment feeling good? Because they feel like they've done something, they've got a load of stuff off their chest, you know, they've said a lot of things, they've gotten rid of a lot of shame, a lot of heartache, they have a plan for life, they've made some friends, they feel understood. You know, it's kind of like a tune-up for the soul and the heart and the brain and the mind, all of that. So people go home and they're so excited, but then some people make the mistake of thinking, and this would be very typical for an addict, that what they're feeling is going to guide their healing. And because they're feeling solid and feeling good, and that they're going to feel their way into recovery, because they're just going to stay in this great feeling state that they got into in treatment, because all the lessons they learned are going to stick with them, and they're going to have this great feeling, because people do leave treatment in a little bit of pink cloud. Lovely. Here's the difference between someone who will succeed after treatment and someone who will not. Two men leave treatment, both in a pink cloud, both with good relationships, good feelings, and a lot of good knowledge, and they're excited to go home. One man looks at the sheets of paper called a discharge or aftercare plan that we made with him, which tells him what meetings to go to, what therapy to go to, when to go to church, when to check in with his family, and how to take care of his life on a day-to-day basis to stay sober. And that man is going to do everything on that list, and he's going to share it with his spouse so that he or she knows what they have working on. They're going to share it with their therapist. We actually send one to the therapist so that everyone knows if you're doing the things that we mapped out, you're probably going to do okay. Because we know that what happens in treatment, while as important as it is, it doesn't mean a darn unless the person follows what is suggested in treatment. The number one thing, Tammy, write this down for me in the chat. I want everyone to see this if you don't mind. I would type it myself, but I can't.
I'm typing.
The number one thing required for sobriety in any addiction, the number one thing required for any sobriety in addiction when you get home from treatment is a lifestyle change. And the number one thing that leads people, you don't have to write this part down, I'm reversing it now. The number one thing that leads to relapse is a lack of lifestyle change. It doesn't matter to me if someone leaves treatment. I'll give you another example. There's a gentleman, he may be around, may not, I don't know, who hated being in treatment with us, and he left early. He was so pissed. He hated me, he hated the program, he hated the work, but when he left, I don't know, some miracle of nature, or maybe it was his wife, the one thing he did do was he started doing the things we'd suggested. He started going to a lot of meetings. He started going to a lot of therapy. He started really working on himself. And you know what? Sometimes people will say, screw you, Rob, screw your program. I'm going to get sober in spite of you. That's great. What you have to do is follow a plan of action that's different than the way you lived before at home. If you go home, if you're the second guy who left with a second great experience and you shook the first guy's hand as you were leaving treatment, but you didn't take that piece of paper home and follow it. You didn't go to the meetings that were suggested. You didn't share the plans that were written out by us for you with your wife and with your therapist or boyfriend or whatever it is, then you're going to return to your behavior, because healing and the strength of recovery has nothing to do with self-will or knowledge or feelings. It has everything to do with the actions that you take to act your way into healing. Some of you spouses say, I don't understand. My husband or wife went to treatment. They're still an asshole. That's right. They're going to go in an asshole. They're going to come out an asshole, because we can't reteach asshole in 2 weeks. But what I can do is we can lay out a roadmap for people to live differently and act differently, so that over time they will get more in touch with you and themselves, and things will heal, unless they go home and just do whatever it is they feel like doing. And if they don't follow the directions they were given, they might as well not have come. I honestly mean that, because, you know, it's very easy to come back from treatment and say, oh, I didn't learn anything at that treatment center, I'm acting out. Well, I'm going to say to you, are you doing everything that we wrote down for you to do? Well, I didn't go to that meeting. Well, I didn't call that doctor. Then don't blame me, because we spent weeks with you, understanding you, working with you, feeling what you needed, working with your family, and we laid out a plan. And we said before you left, follow this plan. Everyone agreed to it. Other patients, the other staff, your spouse. You didn't follow it, can't help you. And don't blame me. I don't give refunds. So really, to this spouse, it's great that your spouse, I'm glad your husband had a good time working with us. I'm glad he had insights. I'm glad he left feeling good. But if he isn't doing the things that he was told to do and agreed to do when he left, he might as well not have come. You wasted your money. That's the way it goes. Tammy, you may have a softer kind of way of saying all that, but that's where I'm at.
No, I'm actually 100% with you. The insanity of addiction is that you think you can control a behavior. I mean, every day I thought I was going to control it in a different way, and having, 2 weeks worth of insights on things, it absolutely, I had the fortunate, I had the fortune to go to treatment, and then I changed my entire life. That's what I ended up doing.
What do you mean? You changed your friendship?
I changed my location. I changed my job. I changed everything. Now I was I was young and single at the time, and I was able to do. I moved in with my parents, for goodness sakes. So I mean, like, I was that committed to to making. I had to get physically out of my environment. Now in today's world, I probably would have gone to a sober living house or something like that. I don't know, but I had to change. All my friends were in the program. I did social activities within the evenings and weekends with other people in the program. I didn't hang out with any of my barfly friends. I changed everything. And I just told somebody today, I still have a healthy appreciation. I never say I'm recovered from addiction. I still know it's there. And if I don't do the things on a daily basis that I need to do to take care of myself,
lifestyle,
it's still there. So
go to a meeting, do the meditation, use some journaling, go for your exercise. By the way, everything we write down is not sackcloth and ashes.
No.
We tell people to do things like join a baseball team, or start doing pottery, or paint your house, or take a class, but those things are also required, because if you're going to get a life and get away from addiction, you have to have things you enjoy. You're not just doing penance. But we talk a lot about that too. But it's up to the person to do it when they get home. And by the way, I would say one more thing to you. You really got a lot of stuff going here. I see that you're here. I wonder, where is your husband? Now, maybe you ask these questions, as spouses often do, to get something wagged at his finger. I don't know, but I'll tell you this. Your husband, if he went through our treatment program, knows well that he should be here every Monday night when we're sitting here talking, to contribute, to do lessons, to grow. And he can do that on Fridays. And, so there's a program waiting for him. Is he showing, there is recovery waiting for him and you. Is he willing to step up for it? Because it's not something we give you. It's something you have to take and live.
Agree. But I'm glad you're here. Okay.
And we're glad you're here.
Yeah. I'm a male sex addict who has been raised by a single mother with narcissistic personality disorder. The role was reversed. I was taking care of her emotionally, and we had an extremely enmeshed relationship until I found out through my psychology degree that our relationship is dysfunctional. I'm familiar with Dr. Ken Adams' work, and I've listened to your interview with him, which I learned a lot from. My question is, I crave women's attention so much. It's like an addiction to me, and would go to extreme lengths just to get their attention. In your opinion, what causes pathological need for women's attention, and what can I do about it?
Well, there's two questions in there. And so one of them is, what kind of attention? Because there's one thing, I want a woman to look at me and want me. I want to look at a woman to look at me and desire me. I want to look over her body and I want her to look back and think I'm hot. There's that kind of exchange. But then there's also I want my secretary to approve of me. I want my sister to validate me. I want the grocery clerk to say I did a good job paying the, you know, everywhere I go, I want women's validation. I don't know in what form it takes, but I think I can give you a clue about what you're dealing with. I'll be a little personal. When I reached adolescence and I started leaving my home and moving away from my parents into social situations like high school, I had to supplement those experiences with sex with strangers. My mother and I were so enmeshed, so deeply engaged, not me and my mother, me and my parents, really. They both pulled me into their relationship so deeply that actually my mother's sister has said to me, you know, Rob, you never really had a chance. Like when you were 5, 6, 7, you were so enmeshed in their lives, you never had a chance to be with other kids, learn from other kids. That's just, we were enmeshed. So what that does to a child in part is that becomes their norm. If you think about that level of being so important, so special, engaged with everything, important to these big people's lives, but not just because you're special and wonderful as a kid, but because they depend on you, which is not really how it's supposed to go. All of this stuff kind of boils down in adult life to feeling extremely anxious unless I'm getting attention, unless I'm being validated. And ultimately, even if I spend a little bit of time alone, I start to feel anxious. I want to look at porn. I want to go out and act out, because underneath that really is this anxiety that my norm is people constantly engaging with me and being close to me. And that's how I grew up for 5 years, 6 years, 8 years. Now I'm supposed to be this person who can be an independent person. Well, you may be an independent man in your work, in your life, but there are maybe emotional parts of you that still feel like you're, where's mom? Where's, you know, for me, it's where's mom, where's dad? Where's mom, where's dad? And there are always remnants of this, you know? So I will say to you that there is more about the, a guy named Lou wrote about boys being molested and boys being abused. I think it's Abused Boys is Mike Lou's book. There is a deeper well to male incest and male abuse simply than Ken Adams, which is a great start. I would also look in Ken's books at some of his references because he got his material from other people. I would absolutely go to one of Dr. Adams' workshops. They're really, if you're dealing with enmeshment with a parent and that is showing up in your life beyond the addiction. And again, I think Tammy will type this into the chat for you. She can let you know how to find him. And finally, I think this is going to maybe confuse you and maybe you won't like it, but it is an answer I think I have for you. One of the things that I had to do was accept that I'm a very needful person. I used to think in addiction, when I was active in addiction, I didn't need anyone. I didn't want anyone. I was fine. All I was doing is getting laid and getting hot, whatever I was doing, but I didn't need anything or want anyone because all of that was buried in the control around acting out and addiction. But when addiction disappeared or I pushed it away and I didn't have a way to get looked at, validated constantly, what is being a sex addict? Is constantly getting validation. Oh, hey babe, and validating yourself. Look at that, look at that. It's a constant stimulation of inauthentic connection, really. It feels like it's connecting, but it's not real. And I think while weaning yourself off the intensity of the addiction, you also need to acknowledge that that was filling a very deep and empty place inside of you. And you still need to fill it. And I'll give you a final example, and maybe this will make some of you smile. I no longer have sex with lots and lots and lots of people and strangers to feel like I matter and I can exist. But I do still need almost that same level of attention, Tammy will tell you. So I have a career where I stand in front of hundreds of people and they pay attention to me. And they think what I have to say is important or meaningful. Now, granted, it took years and years and years to get to the point where I'd get on a stage and teach people things that were useful, but I think in a more natural, in a more healthy way, rather than seeking out strangers for sex or affairs and getting that intense attention, I learned that as a professional, I could find roles and situations where I could be admired and appreciated that would meet those needs where I was giving something and not just taking. But first I had to acknowledge that I am a needful person. I do walk in the room and want everybody to think of me and notice me. I am narcissistic and vulnerable in that way. First, I had to acknowledge that. I had to make that okay because that's just who I am. And I had to remove all the shame around it because there is a part of me that was always like, look at me, notice me. And I hate that, but it's true. And then once I could get to acknowledge that, Dozer.
I was going to say, I hear Dozer. So,
yeah. Someone who wants attention.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to kick him out in a second. until I acknowledged that and I let the shame go around it, and I began to find situations where I could get healthy attention and healthy engagement, that was my path. It's not a slow path, but it is the path. Now, if you're just talking about sexual engaging with women, we have something called a 3-second rule. And if it's just about getting that quick hit of someone looking at you or you're looking, if you find someone attractive, this is how we do it. We are human. So the first second, when you see someone attractive, your body part, whatever, you say, oh, how nice, I'm attracted to that person. That means you're alive. Okay, hold on, I gotta let the dog out. And I'll let you know in a second. Sorry, go on, Dozer. I know you want to go. Go on, get out, go. Okay. So first second, I look at that person and say, oh, attractive person, that's human. Okay, even with your spouse in the room, it's just human. You're gonna look at someone attractive. Then the second step in that process is to look away, deliberately. I look at the ground, I look away, and I don't look back. And the third step in that 3-step process is just to say, gosh, I hope that person really has a wonderful time with their sisters, their mother, their children. Make them into a person. Wish them well as a human being and give them a little spiritual or emotional gift. But this is not a waltz. Waltzes are 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You're not looking and then looking, and you look, you acknowledge, you look away, and then you wish them well. That's what healthy people do. Healthy people notice someone and they just walk on. We actually have to be more deliberate. Otherwise we stare and go like this and wait for them to look at us. And then that applies on a whole variety of levels of ways of interacting with people where we just want them to notice and pay attention to us. You have to accept that's inside of you, and then you have to find healthier ways to engage it. It's not going away.
Okay, so the next one is a continuation. My husband's excuse for acting out was he was the man of the house and entitled to do whatever he wanted, and he was horny, very narcissistic.
Well, I have 2 answers for that. If you are financially strapped and you have children at home and you need that man to pay the bills, I would just try to tolerate him as best I could. If I didn't have to be with that person, I would change the locks.
Yes, thank you. I could. All right.
Sorry.
That one I'm just really having a hard time with. So, and so you did a really great podcast with Dr. Stan Patkin called We Do, and it really talks about how we is so much better than me. And so I would encourage both of you to listen to that. But yeah.
Well, let me just say, so I've been doing I don't know why, don't ask me why, but 2 years ago, I said to Tammy, because we were working together, I was like, I have to do podcasts. Podcasts are things. She was like, oh yeah, Rob, another thing you want to do. But we worked on it. We now have 60 some odd podcasts recorded. We are a top 40 healthcare podcast in the United States. The podcast is called Sex, Love, and Addiction. I think if you're in this room, since podcasts are free, listen. Listen in your car, listen at the gym, just listen, because it's not just me, it's experts from all over the world talking about intimacy, attachment, trauma, relationships, divorce, child, all of it. And it's fun. We have fun. So you should too. Anyway, and then I'll leave you.
Okay. So I found actually with snooping some recent photos of women scantily dressed and naked selfies sent to my soon-to-be ex-husband. I'm the one married to a PA with an infant daughter, still living together. Yeah. He initiated divorce.
I remember.
It looks like he continues to act out. I understand that to him it's no longer cheating, but find this behavior disrespectful to me, but also to our daughter. Is it worth letting him know that I found, or just leave and keep the peace?
Okay, I need to talk to you directly. I remember you so clearly, and I remember who this is. You need to get this man out of your life. And I don't give direction that often. Stop worrying about who he is, what he thinks, what he feels. This is not a healthy person. I have heard you talk before, and I remember. This is a poisonous, harmful relationship where this man does nothing but cause you and your child pain. So I would, every time, if I were you, and I may sound agitated, I don't mean to be, I'm really wanting to be supportive. I understand that you're in grief and loss and you have a young child and you're thinking about this person on every level, good and bad. I think the more support you can get around redirecting your thoughts away from him and more toward health in your own life, the happier you will be. It's not that I don't want to answer questions about him, but I remember the situation and you're not going to be with him. And the less you think about him or focus on him, he's bad news. This guy is bad news. I remember. And at least as you describe him. So that's my
Well,
feedback.
and I'm going to tag on to that and I know that like there's a pull to have this, you know, I want him to not miss out on his daughter. He's going to miss out on his daughter, but you will build a safe place for you and your daughter and make sure that you have other loving people that are supporting each of you. And it's his ultimate loss. And we don't have
And
time.
yours to
Otherwise,
grieve.
yeah, absolutely. Yours to grieve. I've got,
And yours to grieve.
yeah. So you can call me if you want more on that. So, okay. A week ago, you used the image of a broken plate as a metaphor for a relationship that went through betrayal trauma. It has a very strong shock effect on both my husband of 34 years and me, the betrayed partner. I turned it over and over in my head and came to the conclusion that a plate might be so special that one might not give up, but hope and believe that the glued together plate will be even more special than before. Any thoughts? I love
Yes,
that analogy.
I do have thoughts about that. And you know where that came from, since you asked me? It comes from a Lady Gaga video where she and Beyonce are sitting in a car together. And Beyonce turns to Lady Gaga and she says, you know what, Gaga? What she said, like infidelity or cheating is like a broken plate. Once the anyway, the point is, when you first get together, right? First couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. I think for many of us, we have this maybe naive, but that's not a bad word, belief that partner will always keep us first in mind, and they'll keep the relationship first, and they would never do anything that would hurt us or the relationship, and they certainly wouldn't deliberately go out and do something for their own satisfaction that they know, if we knew it, would hurt us. So when we find out about cheating and infidelity and all that, that on some level is that nightmare. Now I know that the person that I've lived with for 10 years, 20 years, whatever, they are not the person who no matter what would have my back. They're not the person that would make sure that I will never come to harm. In fact, they're a person who brought me to harm deliberately because their wishes were more important than mine, or my health, or my well-being. Once you know that, you will never look at him in the same way again. You'll never be that 17 or 25 or 30-year-old girl, woman who looked at him and said, oh, this guy is whatever he is, because he isn't that. He is someone who can put himself first and hurt you. And so what I mean by the broken plate analogy is simply the belief that I hope every spouse has, that my spouse would never go ahead and hurt me on purpose. That's lost in our relationships when there's cheating. They have hurt us, and they know that they're hurting us, and they do it anyway. That's the breaking of the plate. It's the breaking of that naive trust that this person will never let me down, never hurt me, never knowingly do that. So once that's broken, unfortunately for most of you spouses, it's like, okay, well, if they lied about that and they've been cheating about, then what else is? And then everything is, I don't know if anything they've ever said is true. I don't know if anything we've ever had. And that becomes a big, and that's the plate kind of in pieces, right? So I'm going to keep working this metaphor. Yes, bringing the relationship back together, going through disclosure, getting into 12-step, doing therapy, going to treatment, whatever it is, all of that is the glue that holds the plate back together. And you and I both know, and you know that if you see any of those glue commercials on TV, you will know that if you glue a plate really well, you will see the crack for sure. But the place that the plate is least likely to crack again is where the glue is. So yes, it is stronger. Where it was most vulnerable, it has now been strengthened. That doesn't mean there aren't other vulnerabilities and it couldn't crack again, but it's not going to crack right there again in that way. However, you do have a broken plate, and you can't fix the plate. You can only glue it back together. So the remnants of the hurt, the remnants of the loss of naivete, the remnants of the loss of the marriage and person I thought I was with are now going to be replaced with the reality of who this person is. And you can't ever have back the plate you had originally, because that naive sense of who you thought they were and where you thought they were coming from in your relationship, now you know that's not true. And so you may have a stronger, you probably will have a stronger, more honest, more real, more contemporary, more communicative relationship that's more alive. But that little piece of two people who loved each other and thought love will conquer all, that goes away forever.
I was thinking of it's the same thing when a bone breaks, the strongest place is where it heals again.
Right.
So yeah, so it really, you know, so, okay. So, what is an emotional affair, and how does a love sex addict know when he is in one?
Okay, I've been asked this very question, and I think we've been asked this very question, but I will answer this very question because it's a great question. Let's try it differently. I'll make it a little bit broader. How do I know that I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing related to sex, love, and intimacy? How do I know that? I think the only way you can know it is if you are in relationship with other people and you can put them in your mind and think how they might view what you're doing. So for example, if I was engaged in something with someone at work and I thought, ooh, this feels a little flirty, but I'm not sure, but I don't mean to, but it feels like, I would start thinking things like, well, if my boss were here or her husband, how would they look at this situation? How would they like our exchange? Is there anyone else who, looking at this, sitting here with me and this person, would observe this to be anything more than a friendship? And, you know, if you're smooching, if you're kissing, if you're looking into each other's eyes, if you're talking about each other's marriages and how horrible they are, if you're doing all that affair crap, then yes, you're probably saying or doing things that you wouldn't want other people to hear. We have a treatment program. I have dedicated my work to something called integrity. Integrity means I don't lie to my spouse about what I'm doing. And if they saw what I was doing, they wouldn't be surprised. It also means I don't lie to my boss or my sister or my friends or anybody or to myself about what kind of relationships I'm in when I intend to have them be a certain way. And gosh, I don't know, they somehow ended up with us in bed. It doesn't happen that way, and you know it. Third of all, this could be fourth, fifth, I don't know, but another of all, the last of all. And Tammy heard me say this before. I worked with a woman who I just really enjoyed doing treatment with many years ago. And I remember her, someone brought up in group therapy something like, you know, well, I can't decide whether this is good for me or bad for me. One of those questions like you asked, how do I know if I'm engaged in an affair or not? And she said some of the wisest things I've ever heard. She said, look, I've been on this earth for 45 years, and I got to tell you, when I'm going to go do something that's good for me, I never question it. Go have a bath, take a shower, walk the dog. I may not want to do it, but I don't question it. But when I'm questioning, is this a good idea for me or not? 9 times out of 10, it's not. And if it is one of those questions, I absolutely need to run it by someone else in detail to get their feedback. Same issue, same answer.
Okay, so this is the person with the young daughter. Her mother-in-law is coming over to visit and will be staying with us. It will be very awkward for sure, and she has been passive-aggressively attacking me and blaming me for the failure of our marriage and has told me that his porn issue has nothing to do with it. With all this, I'm terrified of the attacks and don't know how to approach her.
Tammy, this is a Tammy question.
Well, I'm going like,
Why?
Why is she coming over? Why is she permitted to come? Like, it's so inappropriate for her to insert herself. And honestly, you know, I can't imagine you don't have the right to say, don't come over or stay at the hotel down the street. But, you know, yeah. Or I'd go see my mother or something and take my daughter while he spends time with his mother. That would be fine too. I would extricate myself. If I can't extricate her from the situation, I would extricate myself, because it would be, you do not need that. I have a horrible mother-in-law in the past. I have a good one now, but I had a horrible one before, so I get it.
Well, I wanted to say also that I have this feeling, I could be wrong, but this person I think is probably fairly young, like probably in their 30s or early or their 20s, and they have a young child, and maybe this person doesn't know about their own personal past. Maybe this person feels like, oh, that's a mom, I have to have her in my house. I mean, it's my husband. I just wrote in the chat, there's this thing called boundaries. Use them. If we're getting divorced and you're a shit to me, I don't want your mother around. Sorry. She can, and you know what? If you really want her to stay with our daughter, I'll go stay with my mom, and she can play grandma for a couple of days, or she can come visit. I'll drop our daughter off at my mom's house, and the 2 mother-in-laws can visit, or whatever configuration you want that you feel safe with. But this man is not going to be engaged with you. I mean, I think I get a little bit strident, and Tammy probably hears this in my voice when I talk to you, this person. And I think it's because when people are doing things that, when people are empowering others to hurt them and don't know that they have the strength to say no, I start to speak louder, like, come on, you can stand up to her. You don't have to do that. You can get your own hotel. I don't know your circumstances. I don't know. You may not have a dime. You may have everything he says. I don't know. But I do want to give you permission to check out emotionally. You can, we have a saying at work that really applies to you and your mother-in-law, and you can follow it. The saying is news, weather, and sports. What does that have to do with your mother-in-law? That means that you in your mind can say, no matter what, there are only 3 things I'm going to talk to my mother-in-law about: the weather, how our shared child is doing, grandchild, and shopping. And I will not discuss anything else with her. Another boundary. So what is going on with you and my son? Blah, blah, blah. You know, Mom, it's really lovely outside. I'm liking that the weather's getting, and she'll get the hint. You're not going to talk about it. Well, that's just like you. You're just being difficult. No wonder why he wants to divorce you. Mom, I need to go for a walk now. I'm going to, you could just keep walking away because you don't need to be abused. You have a young child. That's enough of a job. And your husband sounds like he's enough of a job. You certainly don't need to take on his mother. But you may not know that you have the ability, the personal power to say no. No is a complete sentence. Can Mom come over Friday for dinner? No. Can my mother spend the weekend? No. Can I say that for you? No. You have to say it yourself. Go ahead, Tam. Who else we got?
Okay, so this is the other one that you and I have some energy around, and I don't know the answer to this. My husband's ACE score is 0. What does that mean to you? He started looking at porn with his cousins at 14, went to strip clubs with his brother-in-law around 16, and now he's in his mid-40s. So
it's actually called an ACE scale.
Oh, okay.
And it's aversive childhood experiences. It's
okay.
like the trauma scale that Carnes uses. It's a scale, but much more well known. It's a scale that people use to assess trauma.
Oh,
How much trauma did this person have in childhood? And that's why they call it an adverse childhood, or AV experiences, adverse childhood experiences scale.
Okay.
And it's sort of a more last few years what we generally use to see how much trauma someone may have experienced. So what this woman is saying is that in her husband's history, when he, God, what is it? I'm like, oh, I know what it is. It's political season. People want money. That's why they're calling me. I'm sure that's what it is. Or whatever they want. So what this woman is saying is that that her husband took some kind of exam or test online or with a therapist about past trauma in childhood, and it says he has none, 0. What does that mean to you? He's looking at porn with his cousins at 14 and went to strip clubs with his brother-in-law around 16. He's now 44. Okay, so please stop. So here's the deal. When you're 14 years old, if you're 14 years old and you're looking at porn with your cousins, and at 16 you're going to strip clubs, those are aversive childhood experiences. That is trauma. 14-year-olds looking at extreme porn with cousins, 16-year-olds going to strip clubs. Children are not emotionally evolved enough to be engaged in regular viewing or engagement with those kinds of experiences. That in itself is trauma. And if your husband was a fairly immature or not particularly well-developed 14-year-old and was looking at that porn, he is still acting that out today. And there may be more subtle experiences from his childhood that the ACE has not picked up, aversive childhood experiences. But that doesn't mean that the very thing you're writing about, that's trauma. Do you think 14-year-old boys should be hanging out with their cousins looking at porn? Do you think 16-year-old boys should be walking into bars and we're looking at strippers? If you do, then you'd understand that that is trauma. And that will affect that, that 16-year-old boy who gets molested by the 30-year-old babysitter, he think he's a hot stud. He thinks this is, wow, I was a stud. That babysitter had sex with me when I was 16. He doesn't, believe it or not, that's a molestation of a boy. And it's no different than if the babysitter were 30 and it was a 16-year-old girl in terms of the emotional effect it will have on that boy. But the boy may not experience it as abuse as a girl might. The boy might experience it as hot stuff. But that doesn't mean it wasn't an abusive experience to go to strip clubs at 16. It was, I promise you. So, and who the heck is taking a 16-year-old? You say he has a healthy family? Who is taking what brother-in-law is taking a 16-year-old to strip clubs? How healthy could your sister be or his sister be if they have a brother-in-law who thinks it's a good idea to taking 16-year-olds. So there's a lot that's messed up here. I don't care what his ACE says. I'm just listening to the life you've laid out. There's trauma right there.
Okay. And we started a little bit late, so we're gonna.
Oh, I know you want to power through because we have so
no,
many
no, no, no.
questions.
I just the next one. So we're gonna answer the next one.
Oh, okay.
So on the Wednesday night last week, Scott said addiction is about escaping uncomfortable feelings. I agree. That is why I want to have I want PMO, porn and masturbation, as soon as I wake up, because I hate my life right now, and waking up requires facing all those negative ones more time. How can a person deal with all those uncomfortable feelings when your drug, porn and masturbation, is no longer acceptable? I feel hopeless and haven't gone more than 4 days without PMO.
I have to go for a second now. I'll be right back. I can answer that. Why don't you start and I'll finish. Dozer, come here.
So my thought is, I say this to everybody, if what you're doing right now isn't enough, then you need a higher level of care. That you need help to start changing that. The other thing I don't know is, have you seen a psychiatrist, one who's actually trained? Are you struggling with depression? There's clinical depression. There can be a lot of really legitimate reasons, for what's going on. However, if changing your habits, so your nighttime routine and your first morning routine isn't changing in 4 days, I give you credit for that. Trust me, it's 24 hours. We talk about that 1 day at a time, et cetera. But, if it's like the pressure cooker, it feels like, 4 days and then, I need to do this. So it feels like there's not enough of an interruption of your routine, and you don't have enough positive things replacing it yet. You don't have enough tools. I always say you don't have enough tools in the toolbox. So until you get enough tools so that it isn't, and if you go to bed every night dreading, the morning, if you haven't found some mechanisms to make that different, then that routine's going to continue.
I want to respond also. I didn't hear
Please.
your response. Sorry. Well, I had something delivered and they were delivering it. I would take Scott's explanation a little further, by the way. I don't think that we just act out over uncomfortable. Well, I do think it's uncomfortable feelings, but it's not just negative feelings. People will act out when they get a raise, when they get a promotion, when they're having a baby. All feelings are uncomfortable for addicts, not just anxiety, depression, and sadness. Joy and excitement are also lead to acting out. And what's underneath that is that we have needs that are not being met. When we have strong feelings like sadness, we need to be comforted. When we're angry, we need to be validated. When we're lonely, we need to be supported. And oftentimes we will just turn to ourselves and say, we need to figure this out on our own. I think your loneliness speaks to a need to be more connected to people. And I'm sure Tammy said earlier, and I just want to repeat that, if you don't have anything to look forward to tomorrow, find something to do that you can look forward to. Well, I'll say two more things. One is, there must be something in the world, a hobby, a creative project, painting, writing, sports. There must be something that you can start doing that you can look forward to a little bit each day, whatever that is. So that's one thing. The other side of it, and I just want to say, well, there's two more pieces. One is depression. I mean, you sound like a depressed person, and I don't know how much of this is biological or endemic, but half the clients that I've worked with over the last 25 years can be identified with anxiety and depression that is medicatable, including myself. So don't hesitate to go see a doctor. If you can't drag yourself out of bed and you're dreading the day every day, it could be more than just simply you've let go of your addiction. And I'm not telling you to go on drugs that are fun. I understand you're getting away from drugs, but trust me, antidepressants are not fun. They're not fun. You don't even know they're there. Finally.
And don't go to just any doctor. Go to a qualified, find it, like at Seeking Integrity, you have a really good psychiatrist that comes in and does a thorough evaluation. So you really know. It isn't just like, well, try this pill, try that pill, right?
I don't do the psychiatry, but that's what I hear.
Yeah.
But I want to say one more thing about all of this. I hear, and I don't know how depressed you are, but I hear a little bit of self-pity in here, just a little. Tammy's smiling. And what I would suggest to you, and you won't like this, but it really will help you, is go volunteer for something and help someone else. When I am in my worst places of poor me, and sometimes deservedly so, one of the ways I get out of it is I do this. You guys think that we just volunteer or talk about our programs or books? No. When I do this, I feel better. at the end of the evening, because I have been able to help you guys. I've been able to make myself useful. I actually look forward to these because it makes me feel valued. So I would suggest that you find a way to give to other people where you too can feel valued and support and like you're making a difference. I don't care if you go to the nearest soup kitchen, you will feel better. And the people around you who are also doing service, you will get to be friends with them. You can find your way out of this. There are steps, but it's going to take work, and the work is on you. Tammy, thank you
And
so
the
much.
work isn't going to be done just sitting in your home. You know, it really is about getting out there and connecting with other people, you know, and it will feel uncomfortable, and you will survive it. And actually you may grow to like it. So.
Well, and any doctor who treats depression will tell you that, you know, no medication or therapy just gets you out. You also have to act your way out of depression. You have to make yourself exercise. You have to force yourself, you know, it is, and the people who don't get well as fast, or they relapse. So part of this is, can you find some things you're willing to do even if you don't feel like it? Because by continuing to do them over time, you will feel better. And that's just a reality. Thank you, Tammy, for your time.
Thank you. And to those of you that we didn't get to your questions, I apologize. You know, we do run out of time. I invite you. There's multiple other webinars and drop-in groups, including the old lady posse group starts tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time.
And
so, yeah.
I'm on intherooms.com every Friday night at 6 o'clock. And you can ask questions there. You're always welcome to write me at rob@seekingintegrity.com. And I will make sure your questions get answered by me or one of the expert staff I work with. Have a great evening, guys.
Thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye for now.